Things get petty between the USGA and LIV. Phil Mickelson blasts the USGA boss. Here's why. Tennis legend Phil Mickelson didn't hold back his opinion on USGA CEO Mike Whan. Over the course of 4 days on Twitter, Mickelson unloaded in a series of tweets that left his feelings on Whan and on the situation involving fellow golfer Taylor Gooch. In reference to Whan, Mickelson said, "Just a move." Then, less than an hour later, "Like I said, move." 1 hour later, total move by Whan. Go ahead, Phil. Why don't you tell us how you really feel? So, what happened? What got Mickelson so upset? Well, the issue at hand has to do with two things. The first is the qualification process and criteria for June's 2023 US Open. Second, and probably the biggest issue, is the rise of the competing Saudi-funded LIV. Let's go into the controversies, including the LIV, to better understand why Taylor Gooch was denied entry into the US Open. In 2022, for the first time in forever, the PGA was put in a position it had never been in before. There was a new kid on the block. The PGA actually had a rival professional golf tour to contend with, funded by Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund. LIV Golf is a $400 million league that looked to do whatever it could, not only to establish itself, it actively wanted to poach big-name golfers from the PGA, offering big paydays to any defectors. Some key differences between the two tournaments lie in the number of holes played. PGA players partake in 72 holes over 4 days. LIV golf players do 54 in 3 days. In fact, its very name, LIV, is actually meant to be the Roman numerals for that very number. Instead of just being a traditional individual-based competition, this new league also has ones based around 4-man teams, each with captains. The differences don't stop there. One of the most attractive parts of LIV golf events is the fact that there are no cuts. Basically, that means that unlike a PGA Tour event, there's no pressure to perform on the early holes. Every golfer will play each of the 3 rounds, regardless of their performance in earlier rounds. That relieves a lot of the stress to get off to a fast start. And there are fewer participants, only 48, compared to some PGA competitions. Those can swell up to 156 golfers. All that is great, but let's be honest. What's really luring the pros to the breakaway tour? Money. It's all about the Benjamins, baby. The winner's purse for individual competitions on their tour is $20 million. It breaks down like this: $4 million for number 1, and then trickles down to $120,000 for the golfer that brings up the rear at number 48. Every single golfer involved gets paid, no matter what. This is in sharp contrast to the PGA, which only pays golfers that make it past the first 2 of their tourney's 4 rounds. It's very understandable to prefer a guaranteed payday over the possibility of one. In team competitions, there are $5 million on the line. Whoever is the best team out of the 12-team field wins $3 million. The second, $1.5, and the third, $500K. That's not taking into account the big season-ending payout that guarantees each team at least a cool $1 million. Look at all that sweet, sweet Saudi oil money. Since the LIV Golf's arrival, the golfing world's been split on whether or not it's a good thing for the sport. Some of the upsides are the shorter, more competitive tournaments. This not only helps the players themselves, but can attract new viewers not willing to spend 4 whole days just watching golf. Speaking of attracting new viewers, it's using more modern sports presentation formats. LIV Golf wants to entertain fans, bucking the more stale traditions of the PGA. In order to do so, they're using things like ball tracking technology, zipline point-to-point cameras, and augmented reality. They want a more immersive experience for their fans. LIV Golf is even using interactive apps on viewers' smartphones. The revolutionary new payout system has even forced the PGA to switch to something similar for the 2023-2024 season. However, not everyone is loving the LIV outside of the USGA and PGA. LIV Golf isn't as financially stable or self-sufficient as the PGA. It relies almost completely on outside investment, which isn't guaranteed. Things like sponsorships for the golfers might be hard to maintain because of the next big issue. There are serious ethical issues. Saudi Arabia is well known to be a regular violator of basic human rights, whether it's rights for the LGBTQ+ community, women's rights, or their use of slave labor. Most of the world isn't fond of the Saudis' treatment of their own people, but they like their money. This is a serious conflict, as sponsors could either look the other way or run the other way the more the issues come to light. And seeing that the Saudi government owns, runs, and funds LIV Golf, I'm sure you could see where this could be a problem for a lot of people. Concerns aside, a lot of golfers have signed up with LIV Golf. That includes Phil Mickelson and Taylor Gooch. The PGA was the first to respond to a new growing Saudi-born threat. Their tour commissioner, Jay Monahan, threatened to strip any membership cards from golfers who dared to play in LIV tournaments. Some big-time tour golfers have already thrown their cards away in protest, while others, like Mickelson, will probably be suspended. But the PGA has no jurisdiction over majors like the Masters, the Open Championship, or the competition in question here, the US Open. That is under the purview of the USGA. What spurred Mickelson's Twitter rant was that Taylor Gooch already qualified for the US Open, and he did so by qualifying for the PGA's Tour Championship. Traditionally, qualifying for one means you automatically qualify for the other. But in February, the USGA made some revisions to the qualification process that appears to target Taylor Gooch and only Taylor Gooch. Phil and other fans and golfers feel like it's punishment for Gooch being an LIV Golf participant. While there is still a chance he can make the cut by raising his world ranking or through a special invitation, which isn't likely, Taylor Gooch is effectively not going to be able to play in this year's US Open. When asked about the situation, USGA CEO Mike Wan said anytime we make changes to our criteria going forward, it impacts somebody. And that stinks, but we can only look forward. I'm willing to bet Gooch thinks it more than just stinks. After Golf Digest put Wan's quote on a graphic released on Twitter, good old Phil Mickelson's anger was triggered again. Mickelson tweeted a response. How can Taylor Gooch not take that personal? It's a direct attack on him and his career. How does it benefit the USGA or US Open? It doesn't. It's just a move. Phil Mickelson is of the mindset that Taylor Gooch is being disqualified for different reasons than what Wan claimed. It wasn't just Mickelson who spoke up. Gooch himself talked about the situation on the 73rd Hole podcast. Unfortunately, the USGA decided to go in a different direction, and they retroactively changed that rule. And basically, the rule now within USGA states you have to qualify for the Tour Championship and also be eligible to play, which is obviously disappointing because that changing the rule affected one person, which was me. And so that was frustrating and tough. To be fair, there is the argument that it wasn't a retroactive decision, but instead, it was part of the USGA annual review process. Reasonable speculation would suggest that Mickelson might be right. On the surface, there is no good reason for Gooch not to be able to play in the US Open. It makes perfect sense that the two organizations that are very closely tied together, the PGA and USGA, are bedfellows. Both of them share the same enemy, LIV Golf. Why wouldn't they join forces to punish players who leave their traditional competitions for greener pastures? And what better way to try and deter more defections? And for that reason, Phil Mickelson blasts USGA boss.